can you point to an experience or an evolution or a change in thinking for you that helped you adopt that kind of no mind presence when thorny things like enrollment come up? Because I don't think those things are thorny, but I know a lot of people
Yeah.
do. And I have a lot of conversations with people who are trying to grow their coaching practice,
Yeah.
and all the limitations are in their head, but you can't say all the limitations are in your head
Yeah.
because obviously that's a bit rude. So I was wondering if we could perhaps capture Pam's
Actually,
evolution,
AJ,
because
is it rude? So one of the things I want to point out is that when I talk about coming from love, it's a spectrum of tough to tender. I mean, James will tell you, I've had him up against the wall with my elbow under his chin more than once, right? Like, I don't know about just interrupting someone and, I would be interrupting them and saying, like, wow, I'm hearing a lot of thinking, are we down a thinking rabbit hole? Like, wow, should we dig our way out? You know what I mean? Like I love and I love bringing a lot of lightness and humor to the weirdness of the human experience. Like when our thinking gets us stuck, I love really poking fun at it. James and I have a whole thing about chickens, and right, like so I love to sort of I love to really interrupt and um a lot of what we're doing in coaching is we're observing and reflecting what we see. And then in the field, we're kind of seeing where that wants to go. And I notice that a lot of coaches aren't bold enough in that observing and reflecting. I'll give you an example. I was with a leadership team just after I'd run a 2-day leadership event for their whole leadership team. I then had lunch with the CEO and the 2 co-founders. I took them out of their office, having lunch, right? Relaxed environment. And I asked them, what stood out for you? What did you notice over the last 2 days about your leadership team? First of all, it was crickets. They had nothing to say. And then they were coming up with really dumb things like, I wonder if Kevin's in the right role. And I was pissed. Like, you just spent 2 days watching your leadership team, observing them, being with them, being in it with them, right? And this is what you have. And I slammed my knife and fork down and I said, your observations suck. And they burst out laughing. And I was like, were you present? Were you there? Like, how did you miss what was going on? Right. And they said, well, what did you see? And I said, I see that you have, a bunch of scientists that are really interested in science and not interested in leadership. And I would put you 3 in there. Right. Like, Houston, we have a problem. None of your leaders actually care about leadership. Right. And I listed 10 things I'd observed. Right. But then I have a conversation with them about why they're not observing these things. Right. And we talk about what's going on that's in the way of that and how important that is. Right. So I'm using it and I'm bringing in humor but I'm calling it when I see it. And I don't see enough of that in coaching.
you'd be welcome to join some of my calls because there's quite often a few arm knocks involved.
Nice. I love it, AJ.
But,
I
but
love
going
it.
back to the original question, so we can capture it for the community, I'm curious how that evolved for you. Was there a particular experience or a realization that helped you fully live that versus, I know I need to do that, and then you'll do it sometimes or not at all?
I think it comes from me being fundamentally lazy. Liked like really working too hard. And so I didn't sort of ever have a process for an enrollment conversation. Like I remember I was part of a coaching bench when I first started coaching, and the clients would get 3 coaches to interview. And if I was one of the 3, I would always get the client. and the other coaches were not happy with that, right? But the woman who was running the coaching bench said, why don't you run a webinar for them on enrollment and discovery calls? And I said, I can't. And she said, why? And I said, because I would have nothing to say. I basically show up, I'm present, and I go from there. You know, like there's just all I see is this other human that is confused about being human, which is very normal. And all I'm doing is I'm connecting with that other human. I'm creating our field, right? And in that connection, I'm looking for the spark, right? And really, that would be a very short webinar, right?
But infinitely valuable, because a
Right.
webinar's value is not determined by its length. I wish some marketers understood that one.
But people would be like, what's she doing? You know, but that really is always, you know, just showing up, being me. We have a lot of laughs on discovery calls. I mean, you'll always see humor infused in everything I do. In fact, in my coaching school, I was told to try and, you know, dumb it down, my humor, to do less of it, because I wasn't taking my clients' problems seriously enough. And I was like, I think they're doing that fine. I think I just knew that that wasn't helpful if the coach takes the client's problems all that seriously. I remember George Pransky said to me once, I would never validate a client's feelings. And I was like, what? But wow, was he right?
Well, technically, there's nothing to validate because it's all made up anyway.
Right, right. But yeah, I mean, it's yeah, I think just connecting with another human and then just seeing if there's anywhere this wants to go without anything on it.
Yes, I think what I'm picking up,
Pam,
and perhaps what we can record
sorry, AJ.
for others, is
Go ahead.
the lack of things you turn up with. Like
Yes.
most people turn up with a script, a framework. I've got to get this. I need the money. The mortgage is due or whatever. But if you just turn up and you leave that stuff off the Zoom call is much more in the field, as you described.
Yeah. Yeah. We're just in the field with another human and it's so fun. And then we just get to see, is there anything that wants to be played with here? And sometimes there isn't. And that's great. You just had the chance to meet another human and you never know. I mean, I've had tons of referrals from clients that I didn't coach with, which is crazy to me, right? You know, I get to the end and say it's not a good fit, but you know, here's a referral or, you know, whatever. And then they refer me to other people who end up being a great fit.
James, sorry, you were going to say something.
I was just going to very briefly interject that one of the things that Pam does really masterfully, like I've never experienced, and I didn't realize what she was doing. Now that I understand 3P better, I do. But she is masterful at being with me when I'm feeling a very bad feeling. There's nothing unvalidating about the fact that I'm having a bad feeling that sucks, but she's never validating the beliefs that lead to the bad feeling. And it's really something, because it's always true to the fact that I'm making that shit up, but she's there with me in the fact that I'm feeling bad because I can't really see that in the moment.
Yeah, and James, have you had noticed how much humor you and I have in those exchanges too?
Cry laughing is really an interesting experience, isn't it?
Wow, when we can help our clients with lightness, you know, humor helps us cope, connect, and create. It is a superpower in every human, right? It is part of our resilience system. That's how I see it. When I notice that somebody is what I call light-minded, right now, you know, all bets are off. We can create anything, right? And, you know, and humans are going to dip in and out, right? But we can use that like-mindedness as a way of knowing where we are. You know, I use it myself when I'm coaching, right? And I notice as clients get to understand more about the weirdness of being human, they naturally become more like-minded. They naturally make fun of the humanness. And they take themselves less seriously.
Pam was telling me yesterday on a call, she said, yeah, clients often tell me when I start working with them, they often remark that I notice I'm getting funnier.
Yes.
I had the same experience of being with you. And I tell my husband, I love it when I talk to, I'm just so much funnier when I talk to Pam. And I don't consider myself a funny person. I think that I find myself, I think that's really funny. Like, for those of you who don't know, I hired a comedian once to try, like, that's how serious I took this work. I hired a comedian to make me funny because I knew that would be better for business, right? Like, I find that cool.
But the idea that any human isn't funny, that is totally untrue.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Totally.
Like humor is, it's innate. I mean, watch kids, just see how effortlessly they find life funny. But you know, to find life funny, you need to be onto it, right? You need to kind of be onto how it's tricking you, and you know, and you also need to trust life to find it funny. If I think I have to be hyper vigilant and grip everything that's going on in my coaching business and the way my sessions go, and I'm holding on, right? And I'm not trusting in the creative flow, the energy and intelligence that's feeding all of us and everything, right? If I'm holding on, then I'm not going to be able to be light about what happens.